because nobody tells you what losing your purpose feels like. And I joined the military when I was 17. Like, I watched the trade towers fall on my middle school cafeteria TVs, and that's all I thought about during high school. So like I turned 18 when I was in EOD school, and then left almost immediately for Baghdad. I came home for a few months and then went to Kirkuk. So it was just this blur of heroics, medal after deployment after, that attaboy. And so you think, oh, I'm doing the right things, and like I've got the career and I'm happy and all this. But then as soon as that goes away, you're left with this deep, dark void. And you no longer have the support system that the military provided. You no longer have your brothers beside you. You no longer have your mission. And you're just left in this deep expanse of yourself. And it's like, for me anyway, at like 25, that was the first time I've ever like confronted my shadow and had like nothing around to distract me. And that was one of the like darkest nights of the soul that I've ever experienced, was just like, no purpose, no unit, no mission. It's like, it's just you. And now you need to figure out who you are outside of all of that.
This is Alone and Unafraid. Welcome back to Alone and Unafraid, where we explore the intersections of everyday life, mental health, and mindset with ordinary people who have or are now facing incredible challenges. My name is Thad King, and I'm your host. Joining me today is a man who's just as comfortable behind the M134D minigun as he is behind the mic, who can brew a cup of coffee strong enough to power an entire MH-47 Chinook, Tyler Huckett, or as he's known around these parts as the Java Juggernaut. From heavy assault choppering to taking on your caffeine needs, he's the chief brewing officer at Polestar Coffee, the official coffee of Alone and Unafraid. Tyler, welcome back for another episode.
Hi.
All right, today's guest is Benjamin Lee, a former Air Force explosive ordnance disposal technician with 2 combat tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. After being medically retired from service, he faced difficult challenge, things like losing purpose, battling addiction, struggling after separation from the Air Force. We all kind of go through that. He was determined to turn his life around and make a lasting impact. So he has founded Solar Security Net, the first nonprofit organization dedicated to eliminating residential energy bills by creating a nationwide network of utility-scale solar installations. Benjamin's mission is to provide zero-cost renewable energy to low-income families while transitioning U.S. energy infrastructure to public ownership. He's here to talk about his journey that led him to tackle one of the biggest challenges of our time, energy independence, and to share his vision for an equitable, clean energy future for all Americans. Benjamin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Thad. You nailed it. That was a perfect introduction.
That's what I do. But yeah, hey, I mean,
it only
really
took 16 episodes.
Yeah. I mean, that's really what I really want to get into the energy thing, because this is something I think that most Americans can get behind. But before we get into that, let's talk about how you got there. And for the people that are listening that don't know what EOD is, or explosive ordnance disposal, can you just give us a quick overview of your version, or what you did in the Air Force, or how that went down?
Sure. And it's actually, I don't know if funny is the right word, but back during the height of Iraq and Afghanistan, you couldn't go anywhere without anybody knowing what an EOD technician was. That was the time of the Hurt Locker. Everybody goes, "Oh, is that like the Hurt Locker?" And you'd be like, "No, it's nothing like the Hurt Locker, but whatever, sure." But no, EOD is, in layman's terms, is just bomb squad. So on the military side, the EOD guys, we're trained to handle everything from conventional munitions to IEDs, roadside bombs, to biological hazards, chemical hazards. I even spent 5 years in Italy working on nuclear warheads. So, I mean, anything that had an explosive component to it, an EOD guy was there and knew how to render it safe. So, during Iraq and Afghanistan, a couple years in, the Army was losing EOD techs at a rapid rate, and they needed to pull back and figure out why that was, from a strategic standpoint. So the Air Force actually stepped up and started taking most of the Army taskings that were going to Iraq. And for anybody not aware, the EOD program in the military is owned by the Navy, but all four services, or all four branches, go to NAV school EOD. So Navy owns it. Go ahead.
Which the schoolhouse is in Eglin, right?
Correct.
Eglin Air Force Base up there, like kind of Duke Field up there.
Yeah, in that
I say
area,
up there because
right?
we're in Florida, so.
Yeah, in between Eglin and Hurlburt. It's called the
Yeah.
Kaufman Training Complex. It's off-site from Eglin, but it's attached to Eglin, yeah.
Yeah.
You said the Army was losing them fast, and I'm sure some of that had to do with the war, but I mean, like as a retention thing, or were they just like losing people
getting
in
blowed up,
Iraq?
bro.
Yeah. But I mean, like if we're talking about a huge thing.
It was all in tactics. What, after analyzing a lot of the after actions, all it came down to was the Air Force had a stronger robotics capability than the Army did.
Okay.
So we liked to always do distance and robotics first, whereas the Army were hand jamming much more readily off the bat. And as to no fault of their own, I mean, they were dropped into a shit situation,
right?
You know, with no handbook. So they were kind of figuring, I mean, those wars were kind of like the spy versus spy, motif, where it's the insurgents would change their IED setups and their tactics, and then we would have to adjust to counter their tactics. And it was a nightmare, especially in Iraq, because my first tour was in Baghdad, and it was just a nightmare. The tactics were changing every couple of months, so you couldn't keep up with it. And then, you'd rip out, be at home station for 6-7 months and be training and spinning up to go into your next deployment. And every single thing that you had learned from your last deployment in terms of tactics and strategy was completely different. They had moved to something else. So it was just a cat and mouse game of trying to figure out what sort of devices and IEDs that they were implementing, and then developing the tactics and strategy to counter it. It just happened to be that the service that had the higher robotics functionality just ended up having a better render safe rate, per casualty.
Sure. Yeah. I talked about on another episode, but in 2006 we started. I was an Army pilot, and we started with Air Force EOD up at Fob McHenry, which is what's the name of that town over there? Hawija, Iraq, which is kind of like southwest from Kirkuk, kind of, if I'm thinking right. And we had Air Force EOD techs, and we started with those guys, and we would fly around and look for IEDs or dead dogs or trash on the side of the road or whatever they would hide the IEDs in, or we'd look for hot spots, and we'd have 2 Kiowas or Apaches that would fly with us, and they would look for heat. We tried to go out. They would always change their tactics. So it started, they would in place during the day, and then they got smart and they moved to night. So then we'd start really early in the morning and look for hot spots, and then we'd land, a couple 300 meters off from where we would find the IED. And then the Air Force guys had a pack bot back then. And I think it was maybe the Navy guys had a pack bot, and the Air Force guys had the
Talon,
bigger version. Yeah.
Yeah.
The pack bot's like the little guy that's maybe like 3 feet long, or maybe not even that long. And it's white. There's like the treads or the tank tracks are like a white color. I remember, if I'm thinking right.
Yeah. Like a beige.
Yeah, beige. And then
Yeah.
the Air Force guys had a bigger version of that. But I remember we were with the Air Force EOD techs, and the mission was called, at that time, was called Bronco Strike, because we were with infantry brigade out of Hawaii, because I was stationed in Hawaii. And I remember we infilled the Air Force guys on on what we thought was an IED. It was a dead German Shepherd on the side of the road, and I remember they didn't want to get too close, so they ended up driving the robot up and put some C4 on this dead dog, and then backed off, and then they blew it up, and we picked it up. And I remember when they brought that robot back, like the smell from the dog exploding like rained down on the robot. Was far away, but it just smelled horrible because that dog had been decomposing for
Oof.
But that, I just remember in Iraq during that time, you'd see convoys pulled over on the side of the road because they had a report of an IED, and these EOD teams were just ran ragged, and they were getting, and we eventually transitioned to a Navy EOD team, and I became friends with two of the guys, and I talked about it. I think episode 6, I talk about it. Greg Billatier and Adam McSwain were part of the team I was on, and they ended up getting killed due to an IED. I think it was an IED up in Kirkuk, if I'm not mistaken. But how was that driving on those roads and going to those calls? I mean, like, what that probably had to play havoc, because I remember just flying over it going like, fuck that, man. Like, you have no idea what's in front of you. This is before the big MRAPs and all that stuff. We were still rocking Humvees back then, up armored Humvees, and they had probably gotten Dukes and Warlocks at that time, but we were still losing stuff. What was that like for you as a tech, dealing with that?
See, that the strange thing about that is I remember what it was like, and it was nothing. I mean, that's what your training is for, is to condition you to turn yourself off. Like, but looking back at it, I realize a lot of my post-service issues were because my fight or flight system was engaged 24/7. After that first tour in Baghdad, because in Baghdad they were utilizing IEDs called EFPs, or explosively formed projectiles, and they were getting damn good with them too. In fact, some of the explosive factories that we seized had schematics for all the MRAPs, all the different type of vehicles, all the RGs, the MRAPs, and then our JERVs, Joint Expeditionary Rapid Response Vehicles, or whatever. It was an EOD vehicle.
Yeah, the JERV. Yeah, I remember that thing.
They had schematics for each one of them for how high they had to place their EFP, or how they had to aim their EFPs to hit the crew compartments correctly for their EFPs to have maximum kill points. And they were daisy chaining these together in the numbers of like 5 to 8, and they were hitting entire convoys at once, focused primarily on the team leader side. You take out the command functionality of a unit, and then the rest of them are just sitting ducks. So that's what they were focusing on. And a lot of people don't know this, but in the early days of the Iraq War, Al-Qaeda had hired a bunch of IRA bomb makers, and they came in and they were teaching their insurgents how to emplace these, how to make them more deadly. So our partnership with British EOD, because I mean, the British would deploy to Iraq and Afghanistan as a warm-up for getting deployed to Northern Ireland to fight the IRA. So like there was some overlap there with like, hey, what are the types of devices and components and stuff you've been seeing? And then you would see those same exact IEDs implemented there. But yeah, I mean, you don't realize it at the time, but you're on 24/7, and that just becomes your resting state. So
that's your threshold.
Yeah, your normal is just, oh my God, I could die at any fucking second. And that's great for when your job is to be on 24/7. But in those times where you don't need to be on, that becomes a real fucking problem. we were just talking about the Hurt Locker at the end of that movie, you know, when he's like looking at the cereal box and
I was about to bring that exact quote, that part of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, that's 100% true. And it took a decade's worth of just fucking up and then developing meditation practices and coping mechanisms to re-level out my central nervous system. But I would still go back and do it in a heartbeat. Man, those were the best days.
Yeah, buddy.
Well, that's what we talked about in the last episode. Was one of the guys that was in our unit was talking about we all still find ourselves sometimes thinking like, man, I kind of want to go back. And it's not that like, what are you, some kind of war junkie? Kind of, but
Why do you do it, Hoot?
Yeah. but things get really clear when you're going to live or you're going to die. There's no in between there, and everything gets crystal clear, and you kind of know what you have to do. Every day you wake up with a purpose, and it's that I'm going to go do the nation's business. And it's almost like an easier way of life. I hate to say that, but
it's far easier.
It's easier.
You don't have the day-to-day drudgery of what goes on back here, right? Like your main concern is food and living. You know what I mean? So if that's it, shelter can be taken care of, not taken care of. You'll get it eventually if you don't have it immediately. But you're going to get a meal, whether it's an MRE or whatever, Mermite or something, right? Or, some kind of chow hall snack. And you're going to just try to live. And that's it. And everything else is icing on the cake from there on out during the day. Yeah.
Iraq was, Tyler has more time in Afghanistan than I do. And I've got one 15-month and like 4 or 5 other deployments in Iraq. And one thing that just a kind of a war story that kind of talks about IEDs is on May 28th, 2007, we had a Kiowa from our battalion, our task force was shot down in the Diyala River Valley, which is, if you're kind of bullseye Baghdad just to the northeast, there's a river valley that runs from kind of just north of Baghdad up to Diyala, the Baqaba, not Baqaba. What's the name of that town over there? Baqaba. That's it.
Baquba's right in that region.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it runs all the way to a town called Muqtadiya, which is up on the Iranian border. And the Iraqis got really smart, and they figured there's a main supply route between, at the time it was called Fob Warhorse and Fob Normandy, where in Baqaba, Fob Warhorse, and Normandy, Fob Muqtadiya, and or Fob Normandy, which is Muqtadiya. And there's a main road that runs right along the river up there, and they ended up shooting down this Kiowa, and they knew that the American tactic was they would roll a quick reaction force to secure the crash site. So to the main road, I don't remember how many miles apart. I feel like it's probably 30 miles or so. And there was a cav unit in Normandy, and they rolled out with two Bradleys, I think it was. And Fob Warhorse was going to roll some Humvees up there. So meanwhile, the aircraft went down. I was actually on the down aircraft recovery team. So we were on standby, ready to launch, the whole shift. We got the call, there was an aircraft down. We jump in the aircraft, take off, start heading that way. And we go straight to Fob Normandy and pick up a QRF to infill them, because we can, we're flying 130 knots, so we can get there a lot quicker, pick up the ground guys and put them on the ground. So at this point, there's Apaches overhead and everything is kind of secure. And I'm talking to the Fob Normandy guys, and they're saying, hey, we're going to roll some Bradleys. And I was like, don't roll any QRF. The crash is right off the main supply route, the MSR. This is a classic IED setup ambush. And I feel sorry for that battalion commander that rolled the QRF, because he got 8 of his guys killed. And they rolled, that QRF was coming down. There was 2 Bradleys and 2 Humvees. Kind of, they're both coming from FOB Warhorse and FOB Normandy. The Bradleys hit the IEDs first, and they split this Bradley like almost in half, like a can opener, and killed these guys. And so the power of those EFPs and how crazy, and this was, Muqtadiya is really close to Iran. It was obvious the Iranians were teaching folks how to do this and supplying it and everything. But I just remember after we landed, after kind of everything had calmed down, we had to land and we had to clean up the dead. And I just remember the infantry guys loading these, they ran out of body bags. So, those like the canvas bags they put camo nets in. You guys know what I'm talking about? Those camo net bags. They had to use those to put these guys there was nothing left of these guys. And I remember we landed to transfer the dead to the casualty affairs, got the mortuary affairs guys. And I remember helping the crew chiefs unload these body bags, and like what should be, a 200-pound American was about 50 pounds. And it's a testament to how the landscape of war was changed by IEDs. And then they migrated to Afghanistan, because remember, Afghanistan didn't have any IEDs for years. And then the Iraqis kind of perfected it, and somehow it migrated. I mean, obviously it migrated to Afghanistan, but the point to this story is the EOD, sailor, soldier, airman, and Marine were just overworked. They were just rode hard and put away wet. So I think
you ain't wrong.
Yeah, are we not supposed to say that?
No, I mean, I'll check with the guys.
Yeah, but I mean, they were just getting destroyed. And so I say all that to say, like, I think a lot of people owe the EOD techs a debt of gratitude for rendering safe and saving, frankly, probably a ton of lives that would not have happened if the EOD techs weren't on the ground doing what they do. So good job, you. But
thank you. You know what the most common thing to hear when we show up on an incident scene is? Took you long enough.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Everybody, you know how long we've been sitting here? It's like, bro, we just did 3 calls on our way to you. Like, sorry you had to sit here for a little while.
Yeah. Yeah.
My dog.
I mean, I remember I would fly from Spiker, which is in Tikrit, down to somewhere in Baghdad. I think you said you were in Rustamaya or Falcon or somewhere?
Rustamaya. All over. Warrior, Warhorse.
Yeah, Warrior. Yeah. I remember we'd go down there and I would see a convoy pulled over, and on the top of the Humvees or MRAPs or Jervs or whatever, they would have their frequency, and we would just fly over. Oh, they're on whatever 370 or whatever. Tune them up. Hey, you guys good? You guys need anything? Oh yeah, we're just waiting for EOD. Yep. And then I would go down, drop off whatever passengers or cargo or whatever I was doing, load up again, refuel. An hour and a half later, fly back up, and all along that was MSR Tampa that runs out of Baghdad up to Spike. I don't know what the real Iraqi name for that road is, but we called it Tampa.
Yeah, I know Tampa.
Yeah. There would be convoys like lined up, and then there'd be IEDs between the convoys. Like, it was just insane. This was 2006, 2007, right as the surge was going off. It was just that time in Iraq. I think the 2 pivotal times in Iraq was probably 04 and 05 during Phantom Fury and Fallujah and Anbar, and then 06 and 07 in Baghdad and Diyala province. It was just going off at that time. But back to what did you think about, what were your experience? Was there a big difference between Iraq and Afghanistan from an EOD tech's perspective, or was it pretty much the same?
No, night and day. So whereas Iraqi IEDs were more like scalpels, Afghani IEDs were more like sledgehammers. So there was no precision to them whatsoever, but what they lacked in precision, they just made up for in bulk. So like those videos where you see MRAPs getting thrown, a click from a 2,000-pound charge, that was typical for Afghanistan. Crude, rudimentary pressure plate systems, which were essentially just 2x4s with nails in between them that were buried, subsurface. But it was just jugs and jugs and jugs and jugs of HME, which I don't know is good and bad. You were talking about the crew systems before. In Iraq, that saved us a little bit because they were using a lot of remote functionality, so cell phones and radio operated devices. But in Afghanistan, it was pretty much all manual. So pressure plate, pressure plate, pressure plate. There was some tamper switches, some tilt switches, but like for the most part, it was just raw pressure plates. But that's where you saw the surge of like the roller systems, and then the Huskies that would drive with their GPR panels in the front of convoys, and then the Buffaloes that also had their detection capabilities. So like that's kind of where the civil engineering side of the counter IED war was sort of like heavily useful, because man, some of those charges, they would take the transmission case of an MRAP and literally just throw it through the roof of the vehicle, and it was just torching dudes on the inside. Not that getting hit with an EFP was much better, but I mean, so yeah, in terms of devices, it was a night and day in terms of the actual devices themselves and tactics, because there's a lot of QRF in Iraq too. So like everything was condensed enough that you were typically back at your fob every night, and you would just run HRF or QRF, out of there. Whereas in Afghanistan, you're doing 2, 3, 4 week long route clearances, because the dead space in between all of your posts is just so monumental. But I think I preferred Afghanistan, actually.
Yeah, Tyler's a pro Afghanistan. I'm on Team Iraq only because in Afghanistan, A, they have the will to fight. B, seasonally, but like when they come to fight, they're in it. They're in it to win it. And then
they're really bad at winning.
Yeah, and the terrain wants to kill you in Afghanistan from a pilot perspective. I mean, the terrain is just gnarly. I mean, I guess for everybody. I had a friend that's was a Marine infantry in Afghanistan, and he was talking about like just walking into a village and he was in Iraq too. He's like, in Iraq, I was never concerned with stepping on an IED in a village, but in Afghanistan, it was a totally different story. He's like, the roads were dangerous in Iraq, but in Afghanistan, post 2008, 2009, the roads were dangerous. The walking into a village was dangerous. You never knew if you were going to step on something. It was just a lot gnarly conditions in Afghanistan than Iraq.
And they started to figure out where the best LZs were around the houses that we'd hit too. So they were stringing IEDs in trees, and so you'd come into a place, and then the treetops would start blowing off, and you're kind of like, all right, cool.
You were seeing a lot of that. Like if they knew exactly where we would cordon. So like, if they had a main supply route or even like an ancillary road that went in, if they knew that we cordon typically between 250, 300 meters, they'd have secondary IEDs sitting there waiting for you. So it's just like this shit show of IEDs.
Yeah, the Iraq guys were. I remember in the kind of when the IEDs first started really coming on the scene, they would sit off the road about 200, 300 meters, and they would command detonate them. And then they would notice that the helicopters, we'd fly 300 or 400 meters off the road. And then if you were within like 300 or 400 meters from a road, just sitting in the bushes, no questions asked, the door gunners or an Apache is engaging. Like if you're by it, I remember actually with Ben Channels on episode 8, we were flying from somewhere, and there was a dude standing by the road at like right at dawn, and bro, bad place to be. And that dude wasn't there anymore. And so I think those different, but the Iraqis would get smart. Then they switch to cell phones, and they would, they were it. But I think Afghanistan, like you said, was just it was a different animal, and I think those guys had the will to outlast. They're still there. So, what was that like for you? So you did your deployments, and you actually before I ask this question, in the Air Force, is EOD in the civil engineering squadrons like the Red Horse guys, or is that like is it its own squadron?
No, EOD belongs to the Civil Engineering Squadron, which is under the Mission Support Group. I guess there really was no better place to put us. I know I have no idea what it looked, because I got out in 2014, so I don't know how they've restructured since then. I know that there was a lot of people pushing to move EOD under AFSOC, or Air Force Special Operations Command. I don't know if that ever happened. I don't think that it did. Mainly because by the time people were making that argument, the counter IED war was kind of starting to dwindle down, and once you've outlived your purpose, people just kind of sweep you back under the rug and forget you exist. So that's just the way of the world. That's how it was pre 9/11, and that's how it was, post 2015, where it's like, all right, you guys were heroes for a little bit, and now go do your cool guy shit somewhere else.
Yeah, shut up in color.
Yep. Yeah.
What precipitated you getting out? How did that go down?
I started losing like the feeling in my right arm pretty severely, to the point where like my dexterity was very significantly diminished. And as you can tell, or as you can imagine, diminished dexterity when your job is defusing bombs isn't typically the best idea. So I was given the choice to either cross train or medically retire. And I couldn't really see myself doing anything else in the military after doing that. So I just chose to medically retire, which in hindsight probably was one of the worst decisions of my life. But, I came out the other side better for it.
Yeah. What do you mind expounding on that? Why did it go so badly for you?
Because nobody tells you what losing your purpose feels like. Nobody tells you, hey, and I joined the military when I was 17. Like, I watched the trade towers fall on my middle school cafeteria TVs, and that's all I thought about during high school, was leaving. I graduated and I was 17. And yes, for those people who are going to ask, you do have to have your parents sign a permission slip if you join when you're 17. But I had graduated basic. I was still 17, and I was a couple months into EOD school. So I turned 18 when I was in EOD school, and then pretty much hit the ground running, deploying. Well, my first duty station was Italy, and then left almost immediately for Baghdad, and came home for a few months, and then went to Kirkuk. So it was just this blur of heroics, medal after deployment after, that a boy. And you get out, still riding that feeling, but it's very quickly you realize, like, oh, that feeling is temporary. And that feeling wasn't itching the itch that you thought it was itching. And I don't want to get like too deep on people, but like, I've always had like a pretty large need for validation just due to like childhood trauma. And that experience of like being the hero itched that. It itched it perfectly. And so you think, oh, I'm doing the right things, and like I've got the career and I'm happy and all this. But then as soon as that goes away, you're left with this deep, dark void, and you no longer have the support system that the military provided. You no longer have your brothers beside you. You no longer have your mission. And you're just left in this deep expanse of yourself. And it's like, for me anyway, at like 25, that was the first time I've ever like confronted my shadow and had like nothing around to distract me. And that was one of the like darkest nights of the soul that I've ever experienced. Was just like no purpose, no unit, no mission. It's like, it's just you. And now you need to figure out who you are outside of all of that.
Yeah. I mean, and that was kind of a setup question, because every single one of us has felt that. And that's frankly why this podcast is called Alone and Unafraid, because of that moment that you just explained. That sums the 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 vibe of where you're going to be if you're that guy that's still in the military or gal that's still in. One day you're going to be where Benjamin was and where Tyler has been and where I have been, and you're going to be alone, and you're going to have to figure your shit out. And it is not easy, and probably, at least for me, I still struggle with purpose a lot. And some of the things we talk about on this podcast is there are elements of anxiety and depression and lack of purpose, because just like you said, that itch was being scratched by what you were doing in the military, but that's not really Benjamin Lee. That was a season of life that you had, that for whatever reason, for all of us, it will come to an end, and you need to be. I don't know that you're ever going to be able to really truly be prepared for that.
I think it's a thing you have to experience, right? If you talk about like rites of passages, you know what I mean? And back to the point where nobody told you. It's like, yeah, nobody told me shit either. But at the same time, like me personally, I wouldn't listen. I'm too stubborn, and I'd be like, hey man, I'm done here, right? And so if you're against a rock and a hard place, and someone's like, this is gonna suck, I'm like, yeah, whatever. What I was doing sucked. You know what I mean? Like if you get down to the nuts and bolts and where I was when I got out. But it's just something you have to go through, because I don't think you'll figure it out any other way. You know what I mean? You got to hit that bottom. You got to start peeling like those layers off and get, to the root of it. And if you don't ever hit rock, some people get out and they're great and they do things that are wonderful, and they just kind of have, like, I don't have that personality. I'm stubborn as shit. So I have to skip off the bottom 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times to be like, oh, I'm an idiot. I need to start fixing this. So I think there's something about having to go through it.
Did you have any of those issues where when you lost that sense of purpose, that you were trying to figure out where you were, which way was up, what you're going to do with your life? Did you experience any of that, or did you kind of jump? Did you know what the next pivot was going to be?
I did not. And it took me a good 6 years to even begin answering that question, because as I said, I was losing the feeling in my right arm. So I went through a couple surgeries, nerve release surgeries. And man, that point in time where like that Percocet high that I experienced that first time, I was like, oh yeah, that makes that shit go away. That was the start of one of the other dark chapters in my life, was my addiction chapter. Like I don't want to call it addiction. I want to call it avoidance or running. Like
escapism.
I would do it because I could say that I was addicted to pills, but it's like, what else haven't I been? I've been addicted to booze, to pills, to women, to sex, to war, to anything. But that's just my personality. Like when I'm into something, I'm fucking into whatever it is that I'm doing.
I think that's the majority, the overwhelming of the people, especially. See, like I was in the Army before September 11th, but your guys, Tyler, you were in as it happened or after?
No, after.
Yeah, but your guys' generation knew what you were getting into. Like you raised your hand when we were already at war. Like I was a product of the 90s Army, where I knew I wanted to do, but we were just fighting the Krasnovians. Like we were pretending. We were like LARPing. And so, but I think that is that kind of attitude and that mentality that you just explained, having an addictive personality, is probably ubiquitous among everybody. The overwhelming majority of people that raise their hand to go do hard things, and I don't mean that from a men perspective. I mean women, men, whoever has the balls, asexual here, but whoever has the
False.
balls to raise their hand probably has those type, because we are all, if I had $1 for everybody that told me what you just said, I'd have a lot of dollars, because I hear it from so many people. Hey, I got out. I mean, Jeremy Thibodeau just talked about it on episode 15. Ben Channels talked about it on episode 8. There's so many people that they try to escape is a perfect way you said it. And I think a good thing to think about here when you deal with this is what you resist persist and often grows. And there's I think it's Carl Jung or one of the big psychologists, maybe it was Nietzsche, one of those guys. But the things that you avoid end up staying longer. The longer you avoid it, it sticks around and gets bigger. So, what was that when you were kind of going from vice to vice? How was that time in your life? How did that affect you?
I think it was also, like Tyler was just saying, about the confronting your lack of purpose is something that you have to face. That period of my life was something that I think was almost unavoidable for me. Alcoholism and addiction run heavily in my family, and I feel like I was just primed for it. And so, honestly, I am the type. I'm the cold turkey type. So like if you tell me, oh, you can do a shit ton of suffering right now and get over it, or you can spread it out over a long period of time, typically I'm gonna be like, all right, fuck it. I'm gonna sit down and I'm just gonna suffer right now to get through it. And that was almost how I confronted like my family's demons, was just like I had to make the mistake 400 times to see my own faults and failings and shortcomings for what they were. Because once you see your bullshit for what it is, you can't avoid it anymore. Like, you can do a good job of running and hiding and escaping from it and avoiding it, but once you see it for what it is, you're like, fuck. Like, I can't, like, or maybe other people can, but me, once I see my shit for what it is, it's like, well, now I don't have any other option but to fix it. But that's good, because once you know what the problem is, I was just talking about this from explaining the nonprofit to somebody, and they're like, how'd you come up with the idea? It's like, well, EOD guys are expert problem solvers. We're good troubleshooters. If you know how a system is intended to function, and you know every single step in that process, or the firing train, if you will, you know what is going wrong in that system. And so like, I just needed that period of time to fuck up repeatedly to see where the short circuits were in my own mindset, but also like my own self-image, because a lot, I realized later on, and by the way, people, therapy is a fucking great thing. I highly recommend it. You don't have to go through any of this stuff by yourself. Getting somebody else's insight and opinions as to what they're seeing you go through is just as valuable of a tool of what you experience while you're going through it. But like that, the insight that I gained, that I can now move forward for the rest of my life, that period of time was 10,000% worth all of the hardship and suffering and mistakes, just to be able to come out the other side and be like, okay, like that's a box I don't have to ever open again.
Was there a specific like evening, or like what was the catalyst for that change? You just wake up one day and you're like, you know what? I'm tired of being fucking tired. Like, I got to change this shit today. Or was there just like a single point where you're, if you want to share that?
There was many of them. I think the first time I realized that my lifestyle and my actions were having a significant emotional impact on the people around me, like my family members, because when you're fucking off, you don't care about yourself. But when you realize that your bad decision making and your promiscuous lifestyle is like keeping people that you love awake at night, for me anyway, that was where I was like, well, shit, like this is no longer just affecting. I would be fine if this was just affecting me, but now it's starting to affect those around me and the people that I love. So that was like the first step. And then there was like multiple, because you don't just be like, oh, I'm going to be a perfect human being now. It's like, no, you nip the first thing in the bud, and then you stay focused on that until you're ready to like take on the next thing. And
so you're just clawing yourself out of a hole essentially, as opposed to the turning right around. Yeah. And it's a long slog is what it is.
And it always is. Anybody who thinks that there's a quick fix to like pulling themselves out of a hole, like, I'm sorry, but that's not the case. Like, you can stay focused on the next step that's in front of you, and you should, because you'll get overwhelmed with the entire process if you try to bite the whole thing off at once. But just like, for me, it was like, focus on your sobriety first and foremost. Like, and I don't know how this is for anybody else, but me finding my sobriety was like, I almost gained a superpower, because for the first time in my life, I knew what people meant by like being able to listen to their intuition. Because when you're so either depressed on pills or booze or whatever, or amped up on Adderall and caffeine and nicotine, you never get the opportunity to just sit and listen to like the little guy that's inside of you, who like really is your moral compass, your North Star. So like, for me, getting sober it gave me the ability to listen to that voice again. And it's one of the most invaluable tools that I've gained in my adult years.
Was that when Solar Security Net was like, this is a fucking monumental undertaking. Were you just like, were you like, man, I got to fix myself. And you know what? I'm going to fucking Elon Musk this shit up, and I'm going to solar power for everybody. Like, how did you get from that state to coming up with the idea of Solar Security Net nonprofit? Was it an overnight thing, or did you build this out over time? Like, what was that like?
Okay, so I'm going to, just because we have the time to do so here, I've never actually told anybody this before, but I'll give you my thought process on how I ended up making my way to the Solar Security Net. So, and God, for the people listening, this is going to sound harebrained as shit. So like, just bear with me.
Yeah, send it, bud.
So after I got my shit together, I started doing general contracting work, like house renovations and new builds and stuff. And then I wanted something a little bit more technical, so I actually got into the electrical trade. I became an electrician's apprentice. And then I went to trade school to do the schooling portion of becoming an electrician. And while I was in trade school, I started dealing with the solar industry and how predatory, and it just didn't make sense to me. But that was just like pre-information for me building it. What actually set me down the road was, I was in school one morning and I had my laptop open. I think I was working on some homework, and I was just checking the news. And this was maybe like 6 months to a year after our rip out of Afghanistan, or if you want to call it that, our failure to withdraw from Afghanistan. Anyways, the press dude was on stage, and there was some people asking him some questions, and one of the people asked him, like, so who's going to be held accountable, for this botched withdrawal from Afghanistan? And I remember clear as day, the guy said the purpose of this investigation was not accountability. $31 million investigation into the deaths of United States civilians and service members. But the point of the investigation was not accountability. And something inside me, when I heard that, just broke. I think up until that point, I was still able to tell myself sweet little lies about some of the stuff that I did, some of the places we were sent, some of the interests and assets that we were sent to protect. But in that moment, I kind of like saw things for what they were from a high level standpoint. And I decided somebody needs to fucking do something about this. And so, God, I sat down and I was like, I'm going to figure out a way to become the president of the United States. So I'm looking at our culture, I'm looking at society and the way that it operates. And I'm like, all right, our country is prime for somebody from completely outside the two-party system to win an election as long as they can garner enough of a following of the majority, the public opinion. And I was like, if you could run a campaign like a social media influencer does a channel, then you could, I mean, Biden in the last election won with 71 million votes. I mean, there are YouTubers who have 600 million subscribers. So, like, from a numbers perspective, it would be a possibility, but you would need the leverage in order to gather that kind of following, especially in the political landscape. So I was like, well, how would you gain the goodwill of enough American citizens to have the sort of backing you would need to win a write-in protest of a presidential election? And that was when I was like, well, if you paid every single person's electricity bill for them, that would be a good step in the direction of having the goodwill of enough people to win a write-in protest of a presidential election. So then I had to figure out a way to pay for the electricity bill of every single American citizen. And over time, like, obviously it got scaled back because I had to start somewhere, but eventually what ended up coming out of that was the Solar Security Net, which is a nonprofit approach to renewable energy development, substituting investors and shareholders in the upfront development portion of the process with a 501c3 model, so large corporations can actually alleviate their tax liability, but that money go towards the construction of renewable energy infrastructure, and then the energy generated from that infrastructure will get delivered to disadvantaged communities through virtual net metering as a paperless form of charity. So, like, it started out with me just being really fucking pissed off at the government, and then it sort of like rolled downhill into like an actually actionable plan of a solar development charity, essentially.
So on the solar security net, how does, can you walk us through, and you kind of just alluded to it there a little bit. So I kind of understand the structure now of we're basically leveraging big corporations to offload tax liability via charity, which in turn builds the infrastructure, and then the solar power gets sent to the low income or disadvantaged folks. There's a place here in Florida called the Babcock Ranch. Have you ever heard of that? It's down
I have not.
It's down in Fort Myers, which is on the west coast of Florida, and it's this community of, I don't know how many people live there. I feel like it's 100, but these are high end houses, obviously, but they're completely off the grid, and they have their own solar farm, and everything is ran solar power. So the question I would have is where would you start out with something like this, and what's the what do you see the reality of this? How do you scale it? Are you I guess it really wouldn't work if you're somewhere like the Pacific Northwest where it's cloudy 10 months out of the year, or do you see yourself starting this in the South, or like Arizona where it's sunny a lot, or where do you start?
I am actually starting this in Connecticut, where I live. While Connecticut is one of the least solar inefficient states because of the latitude that it's on, as you just said, because energy prices here are so astronomical compared to the southern regions of the country, even though we have a diminished solar efficiency, because we can sell that energy for so much more, it'll give us a better springboard in terms of revenue to expand our project. So we're actually starting here in the north, and I had some ways of formulating models to hit the best communities, to have the most economic impact on certain communities. But essentially, I'm just going to start by picking a disadvantaged community and then building a network of solar infrastructure in surrounding towns, and then delivering a portion of that energy to the disadvantaged community in hopes of covering every residential energy bill within that community. So I don't know how much you want to get into the weeds in terms of like the details of the program. I know some people typically their eyes glaze over when I start to get into numbers and government tax incentive programs. So that's up to you on how deep you want me to go.
Well, I think maybe just for here in Florida, lots of people have solar panels on their house, and the solar panel guys, I have some friends that are solar panel salespeople, so don't hate, but they're a little kind of used car salesman like it feels like on like a guy in my neighborhood just got it on his house, and he was like, yeah man, my bill's gonna be $0, and when I did the math on how much it costs for him to install the panels, the what his power bill, it's going to take him like 25 years to break even. And which on one hand, if you you're going to be in that house for 25 years, that's one story. But I don't know that most people, like, I don't know if I'm going to be in this house for 25 years, but and then when he got his first couple bills, it wasn't quite what he expected. And I don't know if it was like a volume thing. Our neighborhood kind of generally runs east-west. The houses face north-south. I live on one street, and all the houses face northwest or north-south. The street runs east-west. So when you talk about solar security net, we're not really necessarily talking about individual homes having solar panels, although it could be. Are you talking about more like big solar farms that pump that electricity to places, like a utility, like a power plant style solar farm? Or can you explain a little bit how do you envision it working in terms of the panels and all that stuff?
Yeah, there will be no rooftop whatsoever. In fact, I understand why we went the rooftop route to begin with, because it was a way for us to pass the burden of cost to the middle class, essentially. So these installer companies will work it out so that they do the installation, the homeowner pays for the entire system. And as you said, essentially all you're doing is paying for your electricity bill up front for the next 25 years. But with solar installations, because the government is heavily subsidizing the development of solar, these companies are keeping the investment tax credits and the grants that are available for solar installation, and that's how they're making their profit. Not only that, but from a solar efficiency perspective, residential solar is between 40 and 60% less efficient than utility scale solar, like if you went and build out in a field. Mainly because when you put panels on the roof of a house, they're fixed. Like you can't track the sun. And any degree you are off of 90 degrees from the sun hitting your panel, you're getting reduced efficiency in terms of solar conversion. But by moving those same panels into a utility scale field, you can then put them on dual axis solar tracking mounts and increase your efficiency, your solar efficiency by 40 to 60%. And essentially, because the larger scale solar fields are just feeding all of their energy onto the grid, it's being used, and then all of the energy is just figured out on the back end through administration. What we can just use virtual net metering accounts. So essentially, our fields will be connected to the grid. Local utilities will take the power from our field and use it, in any way they see fit, because it's just getting mixed in with the grid. But then we have a meter that will tell them how much we generated, and then we'll have an account with that utility company that just racks up the amount of power that we generate. Then,
so you're, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so you're essentially taking all that power and the numbers you created and said, hey, this neighborhood here at houses X, Y, and Z through whatever, their bill gets routed to us essentially, or take this off the top of their bill?
Correct. So we will, when we pick a disadvantaged community, we will authorize residences of that zip code to become members of the solar security net. And because we won't be able to cover everybody, we'll just ladder our way up from the lowest median household income all the way, or lowest household income up. So as people submit their applications, we'll just start from the bottom and work our way up as we fill our registrations. And then we'll take those residences that, are, that we are accepted into the program, and then give those to the utility company and say, hey, these residences are authorized to pull from our pool of energy. So yeah, essentially, and this system, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. These systems already exist through utility scale solar obviously already exists, but then community solar has been a big thing that's been coming up, where a bunch of people will get together, pool their money together, build a field, and then have that energy delivered to their houses. This is essentially that, except replacing people pooling their money together with the funding coming from a charity instead. And essentially what we're doing is operating halfway like a for-profit solar developer. So 50% of the energy that we generate is going to be sold either to the power provider, to whoever else wants to buy it through a purchase power agreement. And then we're going to roll that revenue back into the organization, and that will cover our administrative overhead, long-term maintenance costs. And then anything left over will go towards the construction of additional infrastructure. So we can create a snowballing green energy portfolio, just by building this charity infrastructure. And then the bottom 50% of energy generated, that's what gets given away. 25% of it goes towards the disadvantaged community, and then the other 25% actually goes towards the community that agrees to host the construction of our field. So,
okay, that was my question. What do the people that are hosting get out of it? But kind of makes sense. No.
Yeah, it's a strategic effort to overcome some of the hurdles in the current development process of renewable energy, because these large corporations are going into communities and trying to build these large scale fields, but they're getting voted down in the planning and development process. But our organization, because we're technically, our fields would be publicly owned infrastructure because we're a nonprofit under the state, but we can establish relationships with these communities and say, hey, 25% of all the energy we generate is going to go towards providing free or zero cost energy to the people in your community who need it most. We're not just coming in to, rape your land and take your energy. So, and if we need to adjust that model further down the road, that's fine. But for our prototype field, those are the splits that we're going to be shooting for, is 50% on the top end and then 50% on the bottom end.
Yeah. Now I live near the Kennedy Space Center here in Florida, and as you're driving to the south gate of the Space Center, they have this massive field of solar panels, and I'm assuming it powers a lot of the Space Center. I don't know, but I think it's a partnership between the state of Florida and the federal government to power Kennedy. But what do you think the biggest factors influencing cost effectiveness is? Like, why haven't we done this before? Like, or is it already happening, we just don't know about it? Or is the barrier to entry cost, or is it, why hasn't somebody done this before? Because as a layman that I don't really know anything about this, I'm kind of like, man, it's a good idea. Why are we not doing this? What do you see that barrier to entry being right now?
Greed. 100% greed. Like, there's too much money in energy for anybody to be considering giving it away for free. And I just happen to be one of those weird people who, like, I drive a 96 Camry, and like I spend most of my day in a hammock next to the river. Like, I'm not a money guy, but like I just happen to be relatively intelligent. So I just decided, as part of me, getting sober and finding purpose again, I realized the only thing that itched that itch was living in service of other people, not myself. So like, this entire thing, I think, just came to a head because, well, two reasons. One, like, I genuinely care about people. Like I as much as I hate people, I also love them. Like I want everybody. I never want anybody to have to go through the kind of pain and suffering that I went through. And so I'm going to do every single thing in my power to alleviate that burden. And my skill set just happens to lend itself to energy. So I'm just focusing my efforts into that field. Second is this really couldn't have existed until now simply because of the way that solar itself operates, because energy generation typically has a lot of operational and maintenance fees attached to it. You know, like a coal plant or a nuclear facility, you're talking thousands of personnel, high maintenance costs. So like that's a complex piece of infrastructure that requires a for-profit structure. Whereas solar, on the other hand, once you build your field, your long-term maintenance costs are next to zero. I mean, you're looking at about $15 per kilowatt per year in terms of cleaning. So on a 5 megawatt field, you're looking at about 75 grand for your yearly maintenance costs, which just includes like cleaning your panels 2 to 4 times a year and keeping snow removed from them. And then doing like a yearly maintenance checks on your combiners and your inverters to make sure that your output's nominal. But other than that, like your fields sit there for 25, 30 years and just generate electricity. So like if we're going to be subsidizing the construction of renewable energy, why not consolidate our resources under a nonprofit banner and then have that energy going towards helping the people who need it most instead of lining the pockets of large corporations?
Yeah, frankly, sounds awesome.
So why did you settle on solar as opposed to like wind or some of the water stuff that's going on? What was it about solar that kind of got you?
Well, solar security net just sounds cool. Like sounds
Sure
like
does.
social
It
security.
does
No,
sound
but
cool.
Yeah, that's how I roll. Sounds neat.
Windmill security net sucks. Like
Yeah.
solar
Lame.
security sounds better.
I'm not opposed to wind. I just don't know a ton about it.
Okay.
In fact, I was actually just approached by a company. They produce a small scale wind turbine. It's like 12 feet in diameter and it only sits like 12 to 24 feet above the ground. But their claim is that these can be constructed intermingled with currently existing solar infrastructure so you can capitalize on night winds to augment your loss of sun throughout the nighttime period.
Sure.
Now, I want to get through the construction of our prototype field before I enter into any partnerships and arrangements, but like I'm not opposed to implementing that sort of technology. It's just I have to keep one foot in front of the other. And right now my focus is just on getting an operational field up and running so I can prove that the administration of my charity works, because that's going to be the biggest thing for making this go nationwide. Is just
sorry, go on. I was going to say how much internet and how much space do you need to get the field you're looking to do, your prototype field? How much space do you require? Typically,
you're looking at about 4 to 5 acres per megawatt. So the 5 megawatts that I'm looking at building for the prototype, you need at a minimum 25 acres, but I have a 35 acre piece that's actually what our GoFundMe is for land acquisition and then site clearance, planning and zoning, environmental impact, and then electrical engineers plans. So like right now we have a GoFundMe out, and that's to get that piece of land to the point where we can go into a full scale grant submission process to get the rest of the roughly 5 million that we'll need to get the prototype off the ground. But the land or the space required typically depends on what kind of mounting systems that your panels are on. So single axis mounting systems that are closer to the ground, you only need about 4 to 5 acres per megawatt. But if you're looking at the like single pole bi-directional tracking systems, because they have to be a little bit more spread out, you're looking at about 6 to 8 acres per. But because
I was going to say, what does a megawatt get me?
A megawatt of energy.
Yeah, but I mean, like in
1,000 kilowatts.
Or to run a house.
How many gigawatts is that?
Yeah, that was my next
10 billion gigawatts. No, I know what you're asking. So roughly, I think it's about 10,500 kilowatt hours per year per household. So when I last crunched the numbers, say I could get a 20 megawatt field built here, that 20 megawatts would cover 830 households in Andover and 830 households in Willimantic. And that's just the bottom 50% of energy.
Yep.
And it would generate 2.6 million per year in overhead revenue.
Okay. And that was off 20 acres, you said?
No, the 20 megawatt would require like 100 to 120 acres. The 5 megawatt, I haven't done the numbers on, but if you just divide those numbers by 4, so you're looking at about 410 households total.
Okay.
For the 5 megawatt field.
But that's really significant. I mean, if you can if you can do a prototype and you can do that much, and then you kind of just scale it from there, mathematically, you could figure out what's it going to take for America. And then you look at places like out west where it's public, it's Bureau of Land Management, taxpayer owned land that, you know, if you've ever been to Wyoming, it's beautiful, right? But you can't do shit with the land out there. And there's always going to be somebody that doesn't like, hey, you're messing up. That's where the buffaloes roam. But you kind of got to break an egg to make an omelet, man. Like, I get it. We don't want to destroy our land, but there are vast tracts in West Texas or Eastern California, Western Arizona that's just nothing out there, just sand. And it seems like those kind of places would be prime after you do the prototype and you get it all figured out. Now this is just a math problem. And so it seems like it's a no-brainer, but have you noticed any barriers with other energy companies or like big oil or big coal or whatever trying to stop this before it happens? Or or are you at the point now where the people don't think that this is they haven't, you're under the radar right now, or do you think that they're going to come for you when this, not like with a hitman or anything, but like,
maybe,
but maybe.
No, maybe.
The writing is on the wall for the fossil fuel industry. In fact, most of the larger companies that are producing utility scale renewable energy are former fossil fuel holding companies. Like, they see the writing on the wall in terms, because I don't like to approach this issue from the point of clean energy or zero carbon energy. I like to look at it from a finite resources versus an infinite resource. So like if I'm the president of the nation and I have to allocate my resources effectively over the next 3 or 4 decades to get us to where we need to go, I know that our fossil fuel reserves are running, between 30 and 40 years. So I need to start making decisions today that are going to avert us from that crisis when we reach that point 4 decades down the road. So I think anybody who's in the energy space knows that. And we're scrambling right now to solve that problem. But unfortunately, the government only knows how to solve problems by throwing large amounts of money at things. Problem is, letting the free market dictate our energy development strategy is just pulling our resources in a million different directions into 100 different companies, all with their own individual strategies and what's the right word? Motives, I guess you could say. Whereas I'm just trying to implement a strategy where we can start to consolidate that because it's a win-win for everybody involved. And I get a lot of questions about utility companies because people are like, well, the electric companies are never going to let you do this. And it's like, actually, you have to understand how our grid operates. Most utility companies don't produce their own power. Most utility companies just transport power from a power producing station to your house. And then they make their money in terms of transmission and distribution fees or locality fees. So that's not going to go away. The people who are receiving our zero cost energy will still be liable for their distribution fees. So they still have to pay the utility company to get the energy from point A to point B. It's just the electricity that they're receiving will be charged at a 0.0 per kilowatt rate instead of a 17 cents per kilowatt rate. So it's not going to completely eliminate the bills, but it will significantly reduce them because they're not paying for the energy itself, and because the energy is now coming from a much closer location than it would have prior to the field being built.
Man, this is super cool. I don't know that I would have ever in a million years would have tried to tackle a problem like this. And with where you are right now, do you ever foresee like the government trying to take over and run it from a government perspective? 'Cause I feel like that would just ruin it. That it probably needs to stay in a private nonprofit, with guardrails there. Because if you privatize it for profit, there's always going to be that greed motive. But if you go full tilt the other way, now you've got bureaucrats making decisions that they're always going to, some dude is making a decision for what's best for his small, you get the guys in Florida making a decision for what's best in Connecticut, and maybe that doesn't work on a federal level we're talking about. But do you see the government getting involved in this, do you think, and not regulating it, but trying to take it away? Or is there any fears of that, or am I just on another planet with that thought process?
The government typically likes to keep their hands out of energy in terms of owning it. They like to subsidize it and they like to regulate it, which in my estimation is like the best move that they could make. Like they're trying to ignite development in certain industries by injecting capital into it, which is a good thing. And then they try to steer the course of development through regulations, which is also that there are certain parts of our government that can, appear to function at certain points in time. However, I'm actually shooting to get the government involved, but not from a government as a whole conglomerate. I'm trying to get individual politicians involved, because think of the political leverage that it would give a politician to support a program that's going to eliminate somebody's energy bill. So if I can get local politicians to become partners with our organization, hell, even if they want to take full credit for it, I don't give a shit. Just get them involved with the promotion and the funding, because having backdoors into grant submission processes it makes a world of difference. So the more politicians and community leaders that I can get on board with this, the better. Now, I want to remain we're an NGO, so we're a non-governmental organization. And that's the way, as you just said, that's the way it needs to stay to operate as effectively as I see it operating. Because as you said, we can get rid of the greed factor, but we can also get rid of the bureaucracy, because both of those things are destroying energy development. So yes and no. I do see the government getting involved, but strictly from I'm trying to get people as excited about this idea as I am. And yeah, the more people I can bring under my banner, because of how scalable this works as much as people want it to work. The more resources that we can get into a program like this, the more effect it will have. Like it's just exponential in that way.
So speaking of that, how do people get involved? Like what's Benjamin Lee's like, hey, I need help with, A, B, and C. How do people move this into reality?
As I said, as of right now, I am promoting the GoFundMe. That's for $275,000, as I said, for land acquisition, permitting fees, site development, and engineering plans. Although I'm just one dude, and I've never been to college. I'm not an engineer. I'm just a retired bomb squad technician and a tradesman. So if there are people who have connections and networks in these sorts of fields and they like what I'm doing, reach out. There are some people, he's an IT dude for a print company, but he just wrote me an email and was like, dude, I'm super into what you're doing. If there's ever anything that you need help with that falls under my area of expertise, don't hesitate to give me a call. So right now, while also fundraising, I'm just filling out my black book, like filling up my Rolodex of people who are pumped about what I'm doing, have networks of their own, because networking is going to go a long way on this idea as well. Like I haven't had a personal social media in like 10 years, but I'm starting to actually develop the social medias for the nonprofit. I've been working
It's a
with
necessary evil.
It is, because to get on higher status media appearances, that's the only number they care about. How many followers do you have on social media? So it's like,
Yep.
yeah,
we just went through this. Tyler was explaining to me how to use Instagram, and because we've got to we need to grow, and it's either you change with the times or you die on the wayside. So the kids, whatever the kids are doing these, that as much as I detest social media, I'm I look at my kids, and this is where they live their life, and it's just how it is, now. So
yeah.
I think it's probably ultimately you just need that one TikTok to go viral, or because it'll spread the word for you. Here's a random question: is when we talk about solar security net, and you think about the impacts that this could have on American society, and then if it's adopted to the world, this is not something to be taken lightly. This is major societal impacts. The question is, when you said that you're born of service for others, do you think that those values align with the values that you had when you were in the Air Force, or are they connected at all? Or, I mean, I imagine you showed up to the Air Force with that, but through your experiences in combat and the Air Force, which kind of led to ultimately some place that was rock bottom, and then you skipped off a few times and now you're here. Do you see those values of service above self as what's kind of guiding the ship here, so to speak?
I mean, I like to stay humble, and I know there's something that just sounds weird about being like, yeah, I'm so special because I put everybody else before me. But like, no, there's 100%. That's drilled. Like the Air Force's motto was excellence in all we do, integrity and service before self. And it's like those. I mean, on my habit tracker, one of the habits that I track is I tell no lies. Like I try to live a life of radical honesty, because that I've just realized that's the easiest way to go through life. Like you either like me or you don't, but like I'm not.
And you don't have to remember anything.
And you don't have to remember
the truth. Yeah.
But service before self is another one of those things I picked up. And well, yes, the military had a massive impact on that. For as much as I didn't have the perfect childhood, my parents raised me to be the type of person who does, if you are capable of solving a problem that you're walking by, you stop and you solve that fucking problem. Like, even if it wasn't yours to begin with, like, that's now your problem. If you saw it, that's now your problem. If I walk by a piece of trash in the parking lot, I pick that motherfucker up and put it in the trash can. I didn't put it there, but because you saw it, it's now your problem. And I don't want to act like I'm special. I feel like the America I grew up in still had those values. And I don't know where they went, or maybe they still do exist and they're just hiding somewhere. But like, I need more people like that to help me get done what I'm trying to get done. I need more people. Some of the interviews that I've been going on, people are phrasing the charity modality, and they're going, oh, well, what do people get out of it? What do I get out of this? And it's like, that's everything that's wrong with our nation right now. Everybody's looking for what they're getting out of it. It's like, if I have a roof over my head, I'm warm, and I have food to eat, I'm good. Let me focus on how I can help other people, because there's a lot of people out there who don't have those things. So I don't know. You're going to get me riled up.
And I don't. Well, the
Passion.
thing is with this is people don't understand that there's a little trick fuckery going on here. Is that when you do something good for other people, you feel good, and then you ride that high until you do the next thing, and at some point that starts to become addictive, and you realize like, oh, this is this is what it's about, is helping somebody. It's not helping yourself. When you go through life and all you care about is you, that's where you get off the rails a little bit. And we kind of had this conversation at work this morning. It was, if everybody just did their job, just do your job, and don't worry about what's in it for me. Just do your job, and whatever you do, the machine would run. And the problem with society is people are like, well, what's in it for me? Well, yeah, man, maybe help a little bit. And now eventually we can get to a point where nobody pays for an electric bill, because I'm sick of paying Florida Power and Light for a crazy power bill, because we run our air conditioning 12 months a year here in Florida, and it is not cheap. And something like this can set us on a path to, there's always going to be something that we're going to spend our money on. But I mean, Tyler and I went to lunch today, and our bill, I had 2 fucking hot dogs.
And they looked good, though.
They were good they looked good. They were good hot dogs.
Very good.
And they're all beef, Angus beef hot dogs.
Angus. Don't even know him, but he sounds like a good guy.
But then that's Scottish beef, man.
Oh, God, sorry.
But that was like $20 for 2 hot dogs and a Coke or a Diet Pepsi. And then you got like a chicken sandwich, and it was $21 or something.
Yeah. With fries.
Yeah. It's just, this is something that I think everybody can get behind, and it seems like everybody gets something out of it. If you're the land owner, or the folks the community that owns the land, and you can get 25% back, you're helping your neighbors in the next town over, or the low income folks in your neighborhood or your community, they're getting, 25%, and then 50% is getting reinvested to grow. Now we're cooking with Crisco. Like, this thing seems like it could go.
That's $200 they can put back into food.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Or back into local businesses, or what. It's $200 that they can not spend on. There should never be a family in America that has to decide between heating, because Tyler, you're from Vermont. I mean, I'm sure there are people up there that have to decide, like, okay, I can heat my house for tonight, or I can eat.
Oh, it was everything.
Yeah.
Even just like the last couple of years when I was up there, you're spending $300 a month on electricity, but you're also spending $400 or $500 a month on propane or whatever. And if that doesn't work, you got to cut a hole in your roof, and now you're putting in a wood stove, right? And a cord of wood went up to $250, $300 for a cord of wood, and you're going to use 4 to 6 cords for the wintertime to keep your house warm, something like that. You know what I mean? And so now you're looking at, anyway, we can go down that rabbit hole, but anything you can do to kind of cut into those bills, especially up in New England. New England's just outrageous with how they scalp people on prices. It's absurd how much money they take from like the middle class and below. It's nuts. That's
Is Connecticut considered New England?
Yeah.
Is that New England?
Yeah.
Where does New England start? Is New York New England?
No, New York doesn't count.
New York is not. Massachusetts and
it's way down south.
Massachusetts,
north,
Vermont,
and
New Hampshire,
and east.
Rhode Island,
Maine. So I think it starts at Connecticut.
Yeah.
Some people will argue that Connecticut's not, but I would argue like Connecticut's called the Constitution State, so you kind of have to include it in New England.
We're taking petitions.
Yeah. Delaware is definitely not New England, right?
What is Delaware?
No, Delaware is not New England. Yeah. Delaware is south of Jersey.
It's like,
is it?
Yeah,
I don't even know where it is.
Eastern Maryland.
Yeah.
It's like a weird state, man. You can drive from one end to the other, or north to south in Delaware, and not a lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
It's a whole country in Europe.
Yeah.
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 I was stationed at Fort Dix for a little while in Jersey, and it was just a hop and a skip into Delaware.
Oh, man. Were you at McGuire or Fort Dix?
Well, at that point, it had become Joint Base McGuire-Dix.
Yeah, Lakehurst. Yeah, that random Navy thing tossed in there.
Yeah.
So when we talk about your journey from growing up to the Air Force to combat experience to solar security net. Are you doing solar security net full time? Or are you doing electrical work, or is this your full time gig?
I work actually at a yoga studio on the weekends part time. That's to like make funding, because I've been working for Solar Security Net for like a year and a half now for no pay. So like that takes up my Monday through Thursday, and then I work Friday through Sunday at the yoga studio. And I'm actually talking to the Voc rehab guy right now, but I'm getting my paperwork together. I'm going to be going back to UConn to get my business degree starting in the fall semester. So I'm going to be pretty busy come here a little bit, but while it is like technically my full time, it's like my full time part time, I guess.
Well, it sounds like it's a passion of yours, so it probably doesn't feel like. I mean, it is work, but it probably doesn't. I would assume it doesn't feel like work because you're obviously care about it.
I wish I could say that. And I'm sure that one day it will feel that way, but right now, because it's just me on the executive side, I'm having to be like every single person on the corporate ladder. I have to act as that person right now. Mainly
None
because,
of the fun stuff.
Yeah, none of the fun stuff.
No jets, no hot secretaries.
Nope. And I'm not equipped for a lot of these positions. I'm just having to teach myself how to do a good enough job until I get the funding to actually hire people who, it's actually their job to do these sort of things. But like, it's definitely been a learning experience. I didn't even know how a corporate structure or a nonprofit structure or any of this shit worked a year and a half ago. So most of my job has actually been teaching myself how all of this stuff operates, about tax incentives and investment tax credits and renewable energy certificates and solar development and land options. It's just like it's keeping me busy, but I like to learn, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's the keeping yourself, I don't want to say busy, but learning new things. At the end of the day, when all this kind of planes out, the location you're going to be, I feel like right now you're on one side of a chasm and you're looking across. One day you're going to be on the other side and you're going to look back and be like, holy shit, man, I did it. And I think it's super important it sounds like you have that mindset where you know where this is going to go, and what's keeping you motivated to keep driving on, because this seems monumental, but it seems like you're in it to win it. Like what keeps you going? And maybe that might be yoga, because I got to think about yoga here in a minute, but what keeps you motivated?
My future family. I was always one of those dudes, and you meet a lot of these dudes in the service who are like, I'm never getting married, I'm never having kids, and then that turns into like, oh, this world's way too fucked up, I would never bring kids into this world. But like, I don't know, once I got my shit together, I realized that like finding a wife and having some kids of my own is like literally the only thing that I care about. And so, and I was one of those, like, this world's fucked up, I don't want to bring kids into this world. So I was like, yeah, but like, I can do something about that. So like that is my main motivation, is like, I want to find a wife, I want to have some kids. And in order to do that, I'm just going to have to fix the world so there's a better world to leave to my children.
Yeah, that's the beauty of having kids, is like you can make your own people. And I mean, it's really that simple. Like, you just make them, and
Yeah.
you can, yeah, I always joke around. People are like, oh my gosh, your kids are so cute. When they were little, I'm like, yeah, I made them myself. And I mean, it's true, but the point, I mean, with my wife, but the point of this is, when people say I would never bring kids into this world because it's so fucked up, that's exactly why you need to bring kids in this world, and you make an army to turn the tide. Because if you let the world drive you, you're actually feeding right into what's wrong with society, or what we view as wrong with society. If you get involved, have a family, then those are little brains that you can influence to do good things later, that maybe maybe we're not going to change the world, but maybe your kid or your kid's kid or your great grandkid might be that person that changes the world. But if you never did it, it would have never happened, because I think there's a selfish element to that where I think people that say I don't want to bring kids into this world, that's kind of a cop out for not giving it the old college try. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think so. So as you look back and you think on your reflections and what's motivating you to do this, what would you say to folks out there that are listening, that might be in that dark place right now and might be going through, lack of purpose and an addiction, or, what are some of your tips or tactics or TTPs to maybe shrink their agony a little bit, to say, hey, don't listen, take it from me. What's Benjamin Lee's tips for success to dig out of the hole?
Oof. I've gone full circle on my approach, especially in the addiction section, because so much of me wants to, because I understand how helpless people are to their addictive tendencies. Like, you only have control of it once you have control of it over it. Prior to that, you're just a passenger in a car being driven by somebody else. And for a while, and like the AA attitude, is to surrender to your faults, surrender to a higher power. My advice is to confront the enemy, like square your plates up to the enemy and advance. Because, God, I just read a quote by Carl Jung. It was, find where your fear lies, and so too will you find your path. And that couldn't be more true from my life experiences. Those things that you're afraid of doing, that's where greatness lies behind. It is the scary shit. Comfort will only drive you to more misery and more suffering. So while I used to be a softer handed in the addiction category, my advice now is like, you're going to have to go through a lot of misery, but it's worth it once you get to the other side. Once you put enough distance in between you and that thing that used to cause you so much suffering, you're going to be living a life that you never even dreamed of it being possible. And I know for me, I used to wonder what it would be like to wake up and go through the day and not have to like take anything to feel better. And I'm sure there's a ton of people out there who, when I just said that, like, that resonates with them. But like, that's why I don't, like, I quit last year. I quit smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee, and taking my Adderall all on the same day. Just, it's, I'm a sadist apparently, but it's those, I wanted my life. I wanted to be able to wake up in the morning and go to bed at night and not need anything other than what I have internally to get through that day and wear a smile and be content with where I am in life. And so there's no quick fix, and there's no easy solution to get to where you're trying to go other than consistency. Consistency. Even if you only get 0.01% better every single day, do it. Stay focused on just getting marginally better every day. And by the time you look back, you'd be amazed on where you end up. So don't try to bite the whole thing off at once. Just take it one day at a time, and don't try to do it alone. Like, before, when you said, oh yeah, there's if I had $1 every single time I heard this, I'd have a lot of dollars. It doesn't feel that way when you're living in a world of shame and grief and guilt. But like, know you are not alone, and know there are people out there who want to help you get through what you're going through. Don't try to face it alone. Don't try to be a hoo-yah cool guy. Like, lean on your community and lean on the people who love you and want to support you.
Yeah, man, I really dig what you're doing. I think to bring it back around, I think when you made a point where you're like, hey, I thought I grew up in a different country, or the country I grew up in had a little bit more value than what I see now, or a little bit more community probably. And I think that's what that project is at the base of it, at the heart of it. It's about it's about community and doing the right thing for the people to your left and your right. If you can accomplish a thing that people might not be able to do on their day to day, or, you know, who has the backing to try to figure out how to put in a solar field, right? If your day to day is choosing between a power bill and dinner, like, you don't give a fuck where the power comes from. You know what I mean? You're just like, how do I get to this next thing? So if there's somebody out there like yourself, who's willing to put in the work, I think it's a real big community builder. And that's the thing that could right the ship of the United States of America, if it's possible at this time. It's not a small task. It's not an insignificant task, but we need tons of people to look in that direction and find a way to help build that community, whether it's through power, whether it's through food, whether it's, you know, through housing, you know, Habitat for Humanity or something like that. You know what I mean? There's so many different ways to go about it. But I'm just happy that you're doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Benjamin, I think this is an awesome undertaking. I think you're wise beyond your years. I wish more people out there had your tenacity and kind of resilience to do these things and take big risks, man. Swing big. And, you know, if it doesn't work out, like, at least you tried, at least you got in the ring and took some swings on some stuff. But a lot of people just sit on the sidelines and wait for things to happen. And the original name of this podcast was actually No One Is Coming, It's Up to Us. And this is true. Like, no one will save us. We are the only ones that are going to save us. And if every American adopted that mentality that I am responsible for me and my family, we'd be in a lot better situation, because you would get into things like this where you're trying to help the people to the left and to your right of you. And to kind of, to sum up what Tyler was saying is
piggyback off what the commander said.
To piggyback off what the commander said, every favorite military, you know,
gross.
We get text all the time from folks about how, like, Tyler was showing me some at lunch today about, hey man, I had no idea other guys were dealing with this. This is so what's super interesting is your story is so similar to so many other folks. I mean, almost down to the words you're using are the same. And so, I'm not saying that your story is unique, but the theme of this, or how it's all going down for folks, is this is the same for everybody. And the sooner that we all get on board with understanding these shared struggles, and we kind of normalize the mental health, you know, we get rid of that negative stigma, and just, you know, you said as soon as you can call yourself out on your bullshit or something to that effect. Doug White, longtime law enforcement officer, on episode 10, his whole thing is, the minute you own your shit, everything becomes crystal clear. And, you know, it sounds like you got that purpose in through this and service to others. So I really appreciate you coming on. I think that you're doing great things, and this is going to go big, and I hope that it goes big for you, and pray that it goes big. And I'll vote for you if you
yeah, man,
you become president.
One day.
Have a stomach for that.
Yeah, you should make your.
I don't either, but somebody has to do it.
Yeah, you should make. You know how you've seen those? They got like the elephant for the Republican, the donkey for Democrats, and then have you seen the one that's just a buffalo and it says American? That should be like your symbol. So we're gonna put the GoFundMe link in the show notes. So we ask everybody, if you can, if you're going to fucking buy some popcorn for Cub Scouts, noble thing, bro, but like maybe throw some of those ducats over to some shit that might save our country. So go to the GoFundMe, put some money in there, help your neighbor out. You were going to spend that 5 or 20 or whatever. If you think about how many times you go to Starbucks, you want to give those cats in Seattle all that money, or you want to make a difference in our country? How about supporting some initiatives by a fellow combat veteran that's doing great things for our country? So, Benjamin, any closing comments that you want to make, or anything you want to pitch that we didn't we didn't hit, or something that you need to get off your chest?
No, man, I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It's been a long time since I've been able to sit back with some military guys and just shoot the shit. But what I was saying before about networking and stuff, like if anybody listens to this, and maybe you can put like my email in the show notes or whatever too. It's just CEO@solarsecuritynet.com. Even if it's not about the nonprofit, like if you just want to reach out, say, hey, what's up? Tell me what you're going through. Like I have the time. If you want to reach out and say something to me, reach out and say something to me. And you can find me on social media too, Benjamin J. Lee or Solar Security Net on most of the sites. But like I'm just looking to build a network, meet some cool people, and try to save the world.
Yeah, no big D.
No big
as
D.
as my buddy John Williams says, your network is your net worth. So
100%.
yeah, that's I didn't make that up. That's from John Williams, former C1 guy. But yeah, so I think you're doing great things. Again, we'll drop your GoFundMe link in the show notes. We'll put your socials in there, and they can connect with you that way. And who knows? There might be some cats out there that work in this space and that could help you out and maybe volunteer their time. Again, service to others will make you feel better. It sounds like it sucks at first. At first, you're like, man, I don't really want to help anybody out. And then when I'm just being real. Like you work all day, and the last thing that I want to do is go do something for somebody else. But then when you do something for somebody else, and they're truly grateful for it, that's a real superpower. Because then you're like, oh shit, like I really helped that guy out. I'm going to do it again. And then next thing you know, nobody has a power bill. So let's do that. I'm all about that. So, hey guys, I really enjoyed this. This is probably one of my favorite ones that we've done. Let's do it again. Let's circle back in a couple 6 months or year or whatever, and just see where we are. See where we are with this.
Check back in. Yeah,
sure. 100%.
So, hey, if you guys enjoyed this show, please rate us on it. It really helps if you go on, if you're listening on Apple Podcast, it's really helpful if you rate and leave a written review. If you're on Spotify, you're just going to go to the About section of the show, click the rating you want to leave. We like 5 stars.
Yeah,
we're big fans of the 5 stars. But if you're not feeling generous, then maybe don't leave a rating.
Fuck right off.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
Fuck
JK.
right off. Yeah, or that.
Yeah. But more of that. More of that.
It would be definitely cooler if you did leave a rating. But anyways, Benjamin, thanks so much for your time. This has been great. I think you're going to do big things, and I'm excited to see where this goes, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us tonight.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Tyler,
brother, thanks for coming.
I'll see you tomorrow at work.
Oh, I don't want that.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Bye.